This is the Podcast Lab. Subscribe now and never miss an episode.
Deep dive on self-discipline. We got a ton of articles and YouTubes all about it. So let's break it down and see what we can learn about leveling up our self-control.
You know, it's fascinating to me how all these experts, even when they're using different words, willpower, self-regulation, all that stuff.
Right.
It's like they're all kind of circling around the same basic idea.
Okay, so what's the common thread that you're seeing?
Well, I think it really comes down to making choices that get you closer to your long-term goals, even when you know there's that tempting thing right in front of you.
Right.
And, the interesting part is it's not about becoming some kind of superhuman that never feels tempted.
Right.
It's more about learning to recognize those impulses and making a conscious choice.
So it's like that classic saying, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn to surf.
Exactly. Learn to ride those waves of temptation without letting them wipe you out.
I like that.
And one of the things that really surprised me in these sources was how much our beliefs about willpower actually affect our self-control.
Oh, you mean like whether we think of willpower as this like limited resource that gets used up?
Yep.
Or something that we can always tap into?
Exactly. Like there's this famous cookie versus radishes experiment.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Where people who had to resist eating cookies ended up doing worse on tasks that needed focus later on.
Oh, wow.
And it seemed to prove that willpower gets used up, like a muscle getting tired.
Right.
But here's the twist. Newer research suggests that might not be the whole story.
Oh, really? So you're saying just because we've resisted one temptation, like that doesn't mean that we're doomed to fail the next time we're faced with one?
Exactly. One study found that people who believed willpower was unlimited actually stayed disciplined even after doing a tough task. But those who thought willpower was limited showed less self-control afterward.
Wow.
So it seems like your mindset plays a huge role.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you go into something believing you've got plenty of willpower, you're more likely to succeed.
I can definitely see that. Like, if I believe that I am a disciplined person, I'm probably going to act more disciplined.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that actually connects to another important element highlighted in the sources.
Okay.
Motivation.
Right.
When you're deeply motivated to reach a goal, it's like you've got this extra fuel tank of willpower.
It's like where there's a will, there's a way, but sometimes you need a why to find that will.
Exactly. And the sources give some really great examples of what can fuel that motivation.
Okay.
Maybe it's wanting to help others.
Okay.
Working towards something really meaningful to you.
Right.
Or even just getting rewarded for your effort.
Sure.
These external factors can really help you push through even when that limited willpower feeling starts creeping in.
Okay, so mindset and motivation play a huge role. I'm kind of curious how this plays out with kids. I remember hearing about that marshmallow test where, the kid can get a bigger reward if they wait.
Oh, the marshmallow test. It's a classic. What's interesting is that the kids who were able to wait, they often use distraction techniques. They didn't just stare at the marshmallow willing themselves not to eat it. They sang songs, played games, found ways to kind of shift their focus.
So even for kids, self-control isn't about just brute force willpower. It's about having a strategy.
Right. And what's even more interesting is that recent research suggests that kids' environments play a big role too. Kids who grow up where things are unpredictable, where promises aren't always kept.
Right.
They might be more likely to just grab that immediate reward, even if it's smaller.
So even from a young age, our experiences and surroundings really shape how we approach self-control.
That's right. And this connects beautifully with a model that was mentioned in the sources.
Oh, okay.
Metcalf and Mitchell's hot-cool system.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Tell me about this hot-cool system.
It basically says that there are two systems at play in our brains. The hot system is all about impulses and instant gratification, driven by emotions, wants, things enable you.
Right.
And then there's the cool system, which is more thoughtful and rational.
Okay.
It's the part of us that can think long-term, make plans, and consider consequences.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, building self-discipline is about strengthening that cool system so we can make smarter choices.
Exactly. Training your mind to kind of think things through instead of just reacting to every urge or emotion.
Right.
It's like building those mental muscles that help you stay focused on what you truly want, even when there are all those tempting distractions around.
So how do we actually train those cool system muscles? What kind of exercises work for willpower?
Well, that's where those practical techniques from the sources come in.
Okay.
One that's mentioned is called discomfort training.
Discomfort training. That sounds kind of intense.
Yeah.
Like a boot camp for willpower?
It's not as extreme as it sounds.
Yeah.
It's about intentionally putting yourself in slightly uncomfortable situations for short periods. The idea is that by getting used to discomfort, even in small doses, you build up your mental resilience.
So, like, if I can handle a cold shower for a few minutes, then maybe it'll be easier to resist that extra cookie later.
Exactly. It's about pushing past that initial resistance and realizing you're stronger than you think. And over time, this can help you stick with those tougher tasks,
Yeah.
or resist those tempting impulses.
I can see the value in that. And it reminds me of another technique that was mentioned, implementation intentions.
Ah, yes. Implementation intentions. These are super helpful.
Yeah.
It's about creating those if-then plans ahead of time so you don't have to rely on willpower alone in the moment.
So it's like if I feel tempted to scroll through social media while I'm working, then I'll take 3 deep breaths and refocus on my task.
Exactly. By having that predetermined response,
Yeah.
you're basically giving your brain a shortcut to making the right choice, setting up those guardrails to keep you on track.
That's so smart. It's like anticipating the moments of weakness and then giving ourselves a plan to overcome them. And speaking of planning, another theme that came up a lot in the sources was this idea of starting small and being consistent.
Absolutely. It's much easier to build a habit gradually than to try and overhaul your entire life overnight.
Right.
And consistency is key.
Yeah.
Think of self-discipline as a muscle. You wouldn't expect to bench press 200 pounds on your first try.
Right.
It takes time, effort, and repetition to build strength.
So it's more like building that willpower muscle with those daily reps rather than trying to cram for a willpower exam.
That's a great way to put it. Small steps, repeated consistently, lead to big results over time.
I like that. And there was one other kind of interesting point that came up in the sources.
Okay.
This idea that doing things for others can actually be more motivating than doing them just for ourselves.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, because I've experienced that. I will push myself harder to meet a deadline if I know it impacts my team compared to if it was just my own personal project.
Right.
But I hadn't really thought of that in the context of self-discipline.
Yeah, it seems that sense of responsibility to someone else can really boost our willpower. And that brings us to 2 crucial elements that many of the experts emphasize.
Okay.
Finding your why and embracing failure.
Okay, let's talk about the why first.
Yeah.
What does that mean in the context of self-discipline?
It's about connecting your self-control goals to something deeper to your values
Okay.
and what truly matters to you.
Okay.
Why is it important for you to improve your self-discipline? What are you ultimately striving for?
Okay.
When you have that strong sense of purpose, it's like having that inner compass that guides you, especially when things get tough.
So it's not just I want to be more disciplined. It's more like I want to be more disciplined because it will allow me to achieve X, which is really important to me.
Exactly. That deeper meaning can fuel your efforts and keep you going, when you hit those inevitable bumps in the road.
Right. Which brings us to embracing failure.
Yes.
Okay, this is where I get a little confused. Isn't failure kind of the opposite of self-discipline?
Right.
Shouldn't we be trying to avoid mistakes?
It might seem counterintuitive, but the truth is everyone makes mistakes.
Right.
Nobody's perfect, and we're all going to slip up sometimes.
Sure.
The key is to see those slip-ups as valuable learning experiences, not as reasons to give up.
So it's about analyzing what went wrong, figuring out how to do better next time, and using those mistakes to make our cool system even stronger.
Exactly. Each time we stumble, we have an opportunity to learn, adjust our approach, and become more resilient. It's like Thomas Edison said about inventing the light bulb. I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
I love that. So much more positive way to look at those inevitable setbacks.
Yeah.
So to recap, it sounds like self-discipline is about so much more than just willpower. It's about understanding the interplay of our beliefs, our motivations, the strategies we use, and even how we view failure.
You've got it. And that's what's so empowering.
Right.
Self-discipline isn't some fixed trait that you're either born with or without.
Right.
It's a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned and developed with the right tools and effort.
I'm already feeling more hopeful about my own self-discipline journey, but we've covered a lot of ground already.
We have.
Maybe we should take a moment to let this all sink in before we dive into even more insights.
Sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
We'll be right back with more tips and strategies to help you level up your self-control.
Sounds good. All right, I'm ready for more. It really is amazing to me how much there is to learn about self-discipline. It's not just about resisting that extra slice of cake. It really impacts like every part of our lives.
It really does. As we dig into these sources, it's so clear that self-discipline isn't just some abstract idea.
Right.
It's woven into how we work, how we relate to others, even how we manage our own well-being.
One area where I personally struggle with self-discipline is my career. There's always deadlines and distractions and that temptation to just procrastinate.
Yeah, you hit on a key point. These sources all emphasize how important self-control is in the workplace.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Meeting deadlines, staying focused, resisting those office gossip sessions, even having the discipline to keep learning new skills. It all comes back to self-discipline.
So it's not even just about getting things done. It's also about having that drive to constantly improve and adapt.
Exactly. In today's world, things change so quickly.
Right.
And those who can stay ahead of the curve, keep learning, and push themselves are the ones who really thrive.
It's like self-discipline is the fuel that keeps that career engine running.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've noticed that the more disciplined I am at work, the more it spills over into my personal life too.
That's a great observation. The sources highlight this, how self-discipline impacts all these different aspects of our lives, from our health to our relationships, even our finances.
Okay, I'm really curious about the health connection. Does being disciplined actually make you healthier?
The research is pretty compelling.
Okay.
People with higher levels of self-control, they tend to have healthier habits overall. They're more likely to exercise regularly, make better food choices, get enough sleep, and resist those unhealthy temptations like smoking or overeating.
That makes sense. If you can resist that urge to hit the snooze button, you're probably more likely to make it to that morning workout.
Exactly. It's all connected.
Right.
And when it comes to relationships, self-discipline plays a huge role too.
Yeah, I can see how it would be helpful for things like, keeping promises and being a reliable friend or partner. But what about the more day-to-day interactions?
Well, for one thing, self-discipline helps us manage our emotions.
Okay.
When you can hit that pause button before reacting,
Right.
you're less likely to say something you regret or lash out in anger.
So it's like self-discipline helps you be the person you want to be, even when things get stressful.
Exactly. It allows for calmer communication, better conflict resolution, and building those strong, healthy bonds.
Right.
It's about making choices that align with your values. And if you value your relationships, you're more likely to make choices that strengthen them.
It's interesting because when we talk about self-discipline, it's easy to focus on the giving things up part.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is it's not just about saying no, it's also about creating a life you're excited to say yes to.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another important aspect highlighted in the sources.
Okay.
Delayed gratification.
Ah, yes. The classic marshmallow test. It's so fascinating how some kids can wait for that bigger reward while others just can't resist.
What's interesting is that those who could delay gratification, they often had strategies to help them.
Right.
They distracted themselves, focused on something else, found ways to make the waiting easier. It wasn't just pure willpower.
So it's about being strategic with your self-control, not just trying to white-knuckle your way through it.
Exactly. And research shows that people who can master delayed gratification, they tend to be more successful in life. They save money, invest wisely, and pursue long-term goals instead of always going for that instant hit of pleasure.
It's like they're playing chess while others are playing checkers, thinking several moves ahead.
And this actually ties into some fascinating brain science that's discussed in the sources.
Oh, okay.
It turns out that the prefrontal cortex, the part of our brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control, it plays a huge role in delayed gratification.
So basically, the stronger our prefrontal cortex, the better we are at saying no to that cookie today so we can reach our fitness goals next month.
Exactly. And what's even cooler is that research suggests we can actually strengthen our prefrontal cortex through practice.
Oh, wow.
Things like mindfulness meditation have been shown to be really effective.
So if I meditate regularly, I could actually become better at delaying gratification.
It's possible.
Sign me up.
But here's another fascinating layer. It's not just about training your brain.
Okay.
Your beliefs about your ability to control outcomes also play a huge role.
Oh, you mean if I don't believe I can actually resist that temptation, I'm more likely to give in?
Exactly.
Okay.
If we believe we have the power to shape our future, we're more likely to make choices that support that belief. But if we think we're powerless against temptation, we're almost setting ourselves up for failure before we even start.
That's so powerful. It's like our beliefs create a self-fulfilling prophecy. But how do we shift those beliefs if we've always struggled with self-control?
That's where the power of positive self-talk comes in.
Okay.
What we tell ourselves,
right.
the stories we create in our minds, they have a huge impact on our actions.
Yeah.
If we're constantly putting ourselves down, we're telling ourselves we can't do something, it becomes our reality.
All right. So instead of I'll never resist that pizza, it's more I'm choosing to eat a healthy salad tonight because I'm committed to my fitness goals.
Exactly. It's about consciously shifting those negative thought patterns into something more encouraging and empowering.
It sounds kind of cheesy, but I've noticed that even for me, when I catch myself thinking those negative thoughts, if I reframe them in a more positive light, it really does change my behavior.
It's not cheesy at all. It's actually backed by science.
Okay, good.
And the great thing is,
yeah,
self-discipline is a skill that can be learned and developed.
Yeah.
It's not something you're just born with.
So even if we haven't always been the most disciplined person, we can still learn to be better.
Absolutely. And these sources provide tons of practical techniques to help us do just that.
Okay.
One that's mentioned frequently is the importance of setting clear and specific goals.
Goal setting is something I've always struggled with.
Yeah.
I feel like my goals are either too vague, so I never really know if I'm making progress, or they're so big and overwhelming that I don't even know where to start.
I hear that a lot, and that's exactly why being specific is so crucial.
Okay.
Vague goals are easy to procrastinate on, while huge goals can feel paralyzing.
So instead of, I want to be more organized, it would be better to say, I'm going to spend 15 minutes every evening tidying my desk.
You got it. That's specific, actionable, and much less daunting than tackling a whole house cleanup.
Right.
And another really helpful technique is breaking down those larger goals into smaller, more manageable steps.
That makes sense. It's how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah.
One bite at a time.
Exactly. If your goal is to write a novel, for example,
right,
break it down into writing one chapter per week.
Okay.
Or even just one page per day.
Right.
Those smaller victories keep you motivated and make the overall goal feel less overwhelming.
And it's not just about setting those goals, it's also about having a support system, right?
Oh, absolutely.
I've noticed I'm way more likely to stick with my workout plan if I have a gym buddy who keeps me accountable.
Creating a supportive environment is so crucial for building self-discipline.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with people who encourage you.
Right.
Who celebrate your wins and who help you get back on track.
Yeah.
When you stumble.
It's like having a team of cheerleaders for your self-discipline journey.
I love it.
But even with all the best support in the world, there's still going to be times when we slip upright. How do we deal with those moments without feeling like we've failed completely?
That's where self-compassion comes in.
Okay.
It's so easy to be hard on ourselves when we make mistakes, to beat ourselves up and feel like we're not good enough.
Right.
But the sources emphasize this over and over.
Yeah.
The importance of being kind to ourselves.
Okay.
Even when we fall short.
So it's about acknowledging that we're human, we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay.
Exactly. It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a good friend, who is struggling.
And I imagine that self-compassion actually makes us more likely to succeed in the long run.
Absolutely. When we're constantly criticizing ourselves, it drains our energy.
Right.
It drains our motivation.
Right.
But when we're compassionate, it gives us the space to learn from our mistakes.
Okay.
Pick ourselves up and keep moving forward.
It's like that saying, fall 7 times, stand up 8.
Yeah.
But speaking of positive reinforcement, the sources also talk about the importance of celebrating our successes no matter how small.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
We often get so caught up in striving for the next goal that we forget to pause and appreciate how far we've come.
It's like we're always focused on what we haven't achieved yet instead of celebrating what we have accomplished.
Exactly. But those small wins, those moments when we exercise self-control and make a choice that aligns with our goals, those are worth celebrating.
Right.
It reinforces those positive behaviors and reminds us that we are capable of achieving great things.
So it's not just about the end goal. It's about recognizing and celebrating the progress we make along the way.
You got it. And remember, self-discipline isn't just about achieving specific outcomes.
Okay.
It's also about building character.
Okay. I'm intrigued. What kind of character traits are we talking about here?
Well, for one, self-discipline helps develop a strong work ethic.
Okay.
It's about showing up and doing the work.
Yeah.
Even when it's not easy.
Right.
Or glamorous.
So it's about being dependable, committed, and willing to put in the effort.
Exactly. Those are qualities that will serve you well in any area of life.
Right.
Whether it's your career, your relationships,
right,
or your personal pursuits.
And it's also about cultivating a sense of responsibility.
Yes.
Responsibility to ourselves or to others.
Both.
Okay.
It's about taking ownership of our choices and their consequences, about being accountable for our actions,
right,
and about being someone others can rely on.
Those are qualities that build trust and respect both in ourselves and how others see us.
It's amazing to think that, like, practicing self-discipline can actually shape who we become as people.
It's truly fascinating, and it really highlights that self-discipline is a lifelong journey.
Right.
Not a destination.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing process of learning, growing, and becoming more of who we want to be.
That's actually a really comforting thought, because it means even if we've struggled with self-control in the past, it's not a lost cause. We can always learn and grow.
Exactly. And one of the most inspiring takeaways from these sources is that self-discipline is ultimately about freedom.
Freedom. But I thought self-discipline was about, like, limitations and saying no to things.
It might seem that way at first.
Right.
But think about it. When we're ruled by our impulses, we're constantly reacting to our environment, to temptations, to distractions.
Right.
We're not truly in control.
It's like we're on autopilot, just going through the motions instead of consciously choosing our path. Exactly. But when we're disciplined, we break free from that autopilot.
Okay.
We gain the power to make choices that align with our values, our goals, our vision for our lives.
It's about being the driver of your own life, not just a passenger along for the ride. That's such a powerful reframing of self-discipline.
I love it. And one of the most compelling arguments that emerges from these sources is that self-discipline is essential for achieving our full potential.
I can see that if we're constantly giving in to temptation or procrastinating on our goal, we're never going to reach the heights that we're capable of.
Exactly. It's like we have all this incredible potential locked up inside of us.
Right. Yeah.
And self-discipline is the key that unlocks it.
So it's not just about being good or perfect. It's about giving ourselves the opportunity to become like the best versions of ourselves.
Precisely. And these sources offer some amazing insights into how incredibly successful people.
Oh, I love learning from successful people.
Yeah.
What kind of common threads did you notice in their stories?
Well, while their backgrounds and their goals and their approaches might be different, there's one thing they all share.
Okay.
An unwavering commitment to self-discipline.
Okay.
They understand that success doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It takes consistent effort, dedication, and the ability to stay focused.
Yeah.
Even when things get tough.
They're not afraid to put in the hard work and make sacrifices to reach their goals.
Exactly. And they're also really good at setting boundaries and protecting their time and energy.
Right.
They know when to say no
to
distractions and commitments that don't align with their priorities.
That's something I need to work on. It's so easy to get caught up in like the busyness of life and let the important things kind of slip away.
It's a constant challenge for all of us.
Yeah.
But what's so inspiring about these successful individuals is that they weren't born with some superhuman level of self-discipline.
Right. They had to develop it just like we're trying to do now.
Exactly. They faced setbacks.
Yeah.
They struggled with temptation. They had moments of weakness.
Yeah.
But they kept going.
Right.
They learned from their mistakes, and they use those experiences to become even stronger.
That's so encouraging. It means that no matter where we are on our self-discipline journey, we can always choose to take that next step, to learn from our mistakes, and to keep striving to be better.
And one of the most important reminders that emerges from these sources is that self-discipline is not about perfection.
Oh, that's a relief. It's so easy to get caught in that trap of thinking we have to be perfect to be disciplined.
Right. But the reality is no one is perfect.
Right.
We all have those moments where we give in to temptation.
Yeah.
Where we procrastinate.
Right.
Where we make mistakes.
Sure.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
The key is to not let those moments define us.
So it's not about beating ourselves up. It's about getting back up and trying again.
Exactly. Self-discipline is about progress, not perfection.
I like
It's about constantly striving to make better choices, even if we don't always get it right.
I love that it takes the pressure off and makes the whole thing feel a lot more sustainable.
And that's what's so beautiful about self-discipline.
Yeah.
It's a gift we give to ourselves.
A gift. How so?
When we're disciplined, we're giving ourselves the gift of freedom.
Okay.
Freedom from those impulsive urges that hold us back. Freedom to create the life we want.
Yeah.
Freedom to become the best versions of ourselves.
Wow. I never thought about it like that before. It's like we're liberating ourselves from our own limitations.
Exactly. And the more we practice self-discipline, the more we reap the rewards.
Right.
It's an investment in our future, our happiness, and our well-being.
So it's not just about denying ourselves pleasure. It's about choosing long-term fulfillment over instant gratification.
You got it. And what's really fascinating is that self-discipline can manifest in so many different ways in our lives. It's not just about big, dramatic acts of willpower. It can show up in our everyday routines.
Okay.
Our relationships, even our finances.
Can you give some examples?
Absolutely. It could be something as simple as waking up early to exercise.
Okay.
Even when you'd rather stay in bed.
Right.
Or it could be setting a budget and sticking to it.
Okay.
Even when you're tempted by that impulse purchase.
Right.
Or it could be having that difficult conversation with a loved one instead of avoiding conflict.
It's like self-discipline is a muscle that we can use to flex in any area of life where we need more strength and control.
Exactly. And like any muscle, it gets stronger the more we use it.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about how to strengthen those self-discipline muscles. But one thing I'm still wondering about is what if what works for one person doesn't work for another? Is there like one right way to be disciplined?
That's a great question. And one of the most valuable insights from these sources is that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to self-discipline. What works for your friend or your colleague
Right.
might not work for you.
So it's about experimenting with different techniques and finding what resonates with like our unique personalities and lifestyles.
Exactly. It's about being curious, trying new things, and finding what helps you stay motivated and on track.
Right.
And it's also about being patient with yourself.
Yeah.
Self-discipline is a skill that takes time and effort to develop.
It's a journey, not a race.
Exactly. And one of the most powerful messages that comes through in these sources is that self-discipline is ultimately a choice.
A choice. But sometimes it feels like I'm battling my own willpower. Like it's not really up to me.
I hear you. It can definitely feel that way sometimes.
Right.
But ultimately, even when it's hard, we still have the power to choose.
To choose to get up early, to choose to eat the salad, to choose to work on that project instead of watching TV.
Exactly. And with each choice we make, we're shaping our lives.
Right.
And our destinies.
Right.
We're choosing to be the architects of our own lives, rather than letting our circumstances or impulses dictate our path.
That's incredibly empowering. It means that even if we've made mistakes in the past, even if we haven't always been the most disciplined person, we can still choose to change, to grow, to become who we want to be.
You've got it. And these sources highlight this.
Yeah.
Self-discipline isn't just about achieving goals. It's about becoming the best versions of ourselves.
It's about living a life that feels meaningful and fulfilling and aligned with our values.
Exactly. It's about building a life you're proud of.
Right.
A life that reflects your true potential.
Wow. We've covered so much. It's amazing how much there is to learn about self-discipline.
Yeah.
It really is a fascinating and complex topic.
It is. And one of the things that stood out to me the most while exploring these sources is how deeply personal this journey is.
What do you mean by that?
Well, everyone's path to self-discipline is going to be different. What works for one person might not work for another. The key is to find what works for you, what motivates you, what helps you stay on track.
It's like we each have to create our own personalized self-discipline toolkit.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There will be ups and downs.
Yeah.
There will be setbacks and triumphs.
Right.
The key is to keep learning, keep growing, and keep striving to become the best versions of ourselves.
That's such an inspiring message. I feel like we've been given a whole new perspective on self-discipline.
Me too.
Oh.
And I'm so excited to see how you use these insights to level up your own self-control.
Yeah.
And create a life you truly love.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, and I think it's time to take a moment to reflect on everything we've learned.
I agree. It's important to let these ideas sink in. And start thinking about how we can apply them to our own lives.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break to gather our thoughts and prepare for the final leg of our self-discipline journey. We'll be right back to wrap things up and leave you with some final inspiring thoughts. All right, so I feel like I've just taken a crash course in self-discipline. It's amazing how much we've uncovered from all these sources.
I know, it's been quite a journey. But what's exciting is that all these tools and these insights, they're available to everybody.
Right.
It doesn't matter what your background is or what challenges you faced. Self-discipline is a skill that anyone can develop.
It really is about making that commitment and putting in the effort. But it's so encouraging to know that it is possible.
It is. And one of the things that has really struck me as we've been going through all these sources is how interconnected everything is. Our beliefs, our actions, our habits.
Yeah.
It all weaves together to shape who we are and the life we create.
I love that it's like a ripple effect where even small acts of self-control can have a huge impact over time.
Exactly. It all starts with that initial choice. That decision to show up for ourselves.
Yeah.
To make those tough choices that align with our values.
Right.
Even when it's not easy.
So it's not just about resisting that piece of cake. It's about setting off this chain reaction of positive change.
Yeah.
That can touch every part of our lives.
You got it. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to remember that self-discipline is a lifelong journey.
Right.
It's not about reaching some finish line.
Right.
And saying, okay, I'm done.
Right. It's more like a muscle that needs to be constantly exercised and challenged.
Exactly. There will always be new challenges, new temptations, new opportunities to strengthen our self-control.
Right.
It's an ongoing process,
Right.
of learning, adapting, and becoming more of who we want to be.
So it's not about being perfect. It's about striving to be a little bit better each day.
Exactly. It's about embracing the journey with all its ups and downs.
Right.
Knowing that it's those very challenges that make us stronger and help us appreciate our triumphs.
Right. I love that perspective. It definitely takes the pressure off and makes the whole thing feel much more approachable.
And as we close out our exploration of self-discipline, I want to leave you with this thought.
Okay.
Self-discipline, at its core, is an act of self-love.
Wow. I've never thought about it that way before, but it makes so much sense.
When we practice self-control, we're showing ourselves that we're worthy of our own time,
Yeah.
our own energy and commitment.
Right.
We're honoring our potential and giving ourselves the opportunity to truly thrive.
It's like we're saying, I believe in you to ourselves.
Yes.
And that belief can be so powerful.
It can. So go out there, embrace the journey, believe in yourself, and never stop striving to become the best version of you.
And remember, you're not alone in this. We are all on this journey together, learning, growing, and supporting each other every step of the way. This has been the Deep Dive, helping you navigate the vast ocean of knowledge and discover the gems of wisdom hidden within.
Beautiful.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.